It's my honor to introduce today's guest speaker, Reverend Brian Akers. Reverend Brian has been involved in our philosophy and movement since the age of 12. Throughout his teens, he became more and more involved with both participation and leadership of teens on the national level. His work with teens and young adults in our movement continued over the years as he designed and taught scores of workshops, organized conferences, wrote curricula, mentored, developed leadership, and grew the participation and involvement of teens in our movement worldwide. In working with teens, Reverend Brian had to present our spiritual philosophy clearly, simply, and practically, an approach and skill that now benefits audiences of all ages. It is in 2014 that Reverend Brian Akers was enthusiastically welcomed by the Columbia Center for Spiritual Living in Columbia, Maryland, as their senior spiritual leader. And today, would you please join me in enthusiastically welcoming him here to Santa Rosa?
Well, good morning. My name is Reverend Brian Akers. I'm actually a Californian. Yeah, so this is a bit of a homecoming for me. 34 years, born and raised. I accepted my letter of call in 2014 to go to Maryland. If you come out to Maryland, I'll show you a great time out there. It is a fantastic and beautiful place, but this is a bit of a homecoming for me to be back in California speaking to you all today. And so thank you for having me, and thank you for bringing me out here. We've been celebrating, as a Center for Spiritual Living, we've been celebrating our global theme. And our global theme is... Wow. Are you sure that this isn't the 8:30 crowd again? They're a little bit more laid back. So the theme for this year is... a world that works for everyone. There we go. So this month, as Joyce reminded us, is about freedom from discord. Boy, that's a big idea, huh? Almost as big an idea as a world that works for everyone. And so as we expand into this, as we kind of, last month, we were talking about personal responsibility very specifically. And there's no greater thing that we're called to do in this teaching than personal responsibility, the being personally responsible for who and what we are. So if we're going to create a world that works for everyone, then we sure better be a person whose citizenship would be accepted in that world. No? Yes. All right, that's a good place to start. And so we want to create a world that works for us, right? And so as we talk about freedom from discord, if I'm thinking about a world that works for me, I'm probably not focusing on the discord, right? And for those, that don't vibe with the word discord, we want to be free from everything that sucks. I think if Dr. Holmes were a contemporary, that would be a way that he might phrase it. We see a world in which everyone lives and doesn't have to experience anything that sucks. And so as we get into this idea of personal responsibility, we're then called to a place where we have to think of ourselves not only as individuals, but as individuals as part of something greater, right? Because we are individuals, which is already great. And so we already have an inherent sense of greatness in us, which is also great. And so then the question is, in the world around us, where is that greatness, and how do we bring that greatness forward? And so the statement that we're using for this week is, we see a world in which personal responsibility, remember that's what we were talking about last month, a world in which personal responsibility joins with social conscience in the political, corporate, academic, and social sectors. Well, they sure set me up today, didn't they? Tuesday's right around the corner, right? And so I'm going to read that statement again because I think it's important for us to recognize that there's two very important pieces of this puzzle, right? So the first one is the one that we spent in, and you guys know that because you spent all last month dealing with that. So I'm going to assume you know that. But we see a world in which personal responsibility is joined with social conscience in the political, corporate, academic, and social sectors. And so when we think about discord, is there anyone that doesn't know in their life where their discord is? If you don't, I'm sure there's people out there that would be happy to remind you. And so we all know where in our life we're experiencing something that we might call discord, right? And we can find it in any of the areas in our lives where it lives. Now, again, I don't want to make this as a statement as if all of you have discord everywhere. That would be counterproductive to what I'm trying to express to you today. But to know that in any one of those sectors, whether it's political, whether it's social, whether it's corporate, no matter where, whether it's academic, that in those areas, when we have areas where we feel like it's not good, we know where those areas are. Yes? So we're not going to get into the process of finding out what's messed up. You know, that's a thing that a lot of people get stuck in, is the endeavor to find all the boo-boos. What's broken? Let's go find all the broken stuff. Right? This is a good use of my time. I'm going to find out everywhere in my life that I have discord, and then I'm going to pile them all up in a neat little pile, and then every time I meet someone, I'm going to go, look, I found everything that's horrible in my life. Right? Nobody lives like that, though, right? None of you guys know that person, right? Okay, all right, good. I just want to make sure I know who I'm speaking to. And so, we live in this world where all of those different arenas, all those different structures, whether they're social, corporate, whatever they might be, they're made by human beings, right? They're structures that we made. Without us, they literally wouldn't be there. So we know that we've created them, and I'm using the royal we, right? But the universal we is the one that understands that humanity is one thing. And so first thing we've really got to be willing to do is to just accept who and what we actually are. We are these amazing and profound, intelligent creatures of God, or spirit, whatever you choose to call it, that have the ability to create these immense, beautiful, complex systems and structures like it was whatever. Yeah, what do you guys do? Oh, we shape and mold the face of the earth in our off time. And so, because we know that it's created by us, we know that everything that lives in it has been created by us as well, right? This is all pretty straightforward stuff so far. Yeah. So, as we look at the areas in those structures that create what we feel is discord or discomfort, or dis-ease for some, we have to ask ourselves one simple question. What would I rather experience there? Now, it's very important that we see how this question is set up, right? It's real specific and deliberate. How would we rather have it be? And the reason that we ask ourselves that question is because the endeavor to seek out what's broken and what's wrong tends to be something that has us focus on what? What's broken and what's wrong. And what do we know in our teaching? What we believe and where our focus is what multiplies in our lives, right? So, how productive is it for us to say, okay, I'm going to fix American politics today. I'm going to tell you what's wrong with the American political system, which no one has ever tried to do. And so, how many times have we tried to beat our head against that wall? In every area of our life. Well, in my work life, I'm going to identify all the stuff that's jacked up, and then I'm going to get home, and my roommate or my spouse or my partner or the first person I run into as soon as I leave the office immediately gets slammed with everything that I have found that is wrong with my workplace or my job or whatever it might be. And we can do this, if we choose to, in every area of our life, right? Socially, this is what's wrong with the world today, right? In academia, this is why our children aren't getting the education they need. Or this is why my higher education is so tough to pay for. We won't go there. But ultimately, we have to ask ourselves the question, what would we rather have? And the reason we have to ask ourselves this question is because the first thing that it does to us is it moves us away from the problem. You notice it doesn't make us pretend that the problem doesn't exist. It's a very different thing. It moves us away from the problem. It distances us from the junk and puts us in position to answer a question that's more productive, that's more creative. And when we ask ourselves that question, here's the interesting part, is that we don't have to get bogged down with the never-ending battle of good versus evil. Is it good that I want this other thing? Is the thing that I want good, or is it a bad thing? Is the thing that I'm experiencing a good thing or a bad thing? Because a lot of times that's what gets us drug in, right? Is the emotional attachments, maybe even some righteousness about the thing and how we're supposed to feel about it and whether or not it's good or bad. But when we ask ourselves, what would we rather have? What we're doing is we're focusing on something entirely different. Well, now we're saying, well, okay. Well, so yesterday and for weeks now, I've been using my imagination to tell me what the world would be like if the political climate didn't change. And it's been scary and crazy and weird and frustrating, bizarre at times. But when I ask myself, what would I rather experience in that arena? Suddenly, our imagination is lit up with the creative impulsion to know something greater. And not because, it doesn't matter what was there before. It doesn't matter that it was good. It doesn't matter that it was bad. It doesn't matter who thought it was good or bad. It only matters that you have found that thing that you desire to express and create. And when you answer that question, you find that thing that you desire to express and create, you claim authority over who you are as a citizen in a world that works for everyone. You claim the authority to be able to say, okay, so I'm going to know that this is the desired experience that I want to have at work. This is the desired experience that I want to have of the political climate of the world. This is the desired experience that I want to have. And why is it important for us to know what we would rather have as opposed to knowing what we don't want? Because I know a lot of people that have known what they don't want that have a really, really tough time going anywhere but the place where the stuff they don't want lives. How are you going to draw a roadmap to a place that you want if you haven't taken the time to find it on the map in the first place? And so when we talk about taking that personal responsibility and joining it with a social conscience in political and social arenas, we have to stop doing what we're doing. If you find an area in one of those places where you sense some idea of discord, that sense of discord has only one home. Do you know where it is? It's in you. It literally has only one home, and that home is inside of you. And so when you seek to develop a target, something that you desire, something that you want, now you're creating space within yourself for the thing that you want to have life. Right? And what do we do when we see an area of our life where we don't like what we see? Do we tend to lend our heart to it? Do we tend to be compassionate toward the boss who rides us for 8 hours a day. I've never had that experience. I had that experience. It spit me out and put me in this job. How do we react when someone is like got that vein that like whenever you talk about politics with that one person and their forehead like wrinkles in and their eyes like bug out, right? Who do we bring to that conversation? Us. Who do we bring? How do we show up? Who are we in the midst of our discord? And there are those who have put the time and energy and effort into being what they desire to be. But here's the thing, even that question is not as good as the first one. Who are you now in those situations? That's not the best question. The reason that's not the best question is because if you ask that question, you're going to find out what you already knew. You know what it's like to be who you've currently been in those circumstances, and what are you experiencing? Discord, right? But like Dr. Holmes says in our quote that we read this morning, there is a time that we assume that every single living human being will be free of discord. Do you know what that would almost look like? It almost would look like a world that works for everyone, don't you think? And so to ask ourselves that question, well, who am I being in political conversations? And who am I being at this job that I despise? And who am I being working on these social issues where I see that there's an enemy out there that's oppressing people? Even the language, the posture, the position that we take sometimes, right? Around what we're being called to do. How often are we fighting for peace? And so to ask that question is silly, because whatever we've been doing, we know in this teaching, has created the discord that we're feeling. And so we don't need to ask that question either. Wow, we're making this pretty easy, huh? And so then we have to look deeper into the original question, which is what do we desire to experience there? And so, sorry. It's my favorite ringtone. So we have to ask ourselves, what do we desire? What are we desiring to experience? And once we have the answer to that question, then we can begin to do the thing that we've been called to do, which is to change. Now, what comes after that? We're called to create change. Where? Typically, the answer is, well, at work, duh, that's what we're talking about. Right? In politics, hello, like you've been talking about it for like 10 minutes already. But the actual endeavor is to seek out change in ourselves in a way that literally dismisses, not denies the existence of our discord. There is a measure of ignorance that we mistakenly allow ourselves to fall into if we literally try and deny that an experience that we know for a fact is occurring is in fact occurring. The fake it till you make it thing sounds cool, but at the end of the day, it doesn't affect change where change needs to be made, because the person who's saying that change needs to be made is also saying, but there's nothing wrong. This may challenge some of what you've believed or thought about the way that this thing works. But that's okay. That's okay. Because we can reconcile that with one simple question. What would you rather be experiencing in the world? And so in order for us to create that what we would rather be experiencing in the world, we have to really drill down into answering that question from the standpoint of, this is kind of like, that would be Major League Ball. We're going to come down into the minors, and we're going to say, okay, what would give me a little less pain here? How would how would I want to do this if it was just a little less painful? What would it be like? Who would I be? What do I want to have there? Because what we've grown accustomed to is whoever we've brought to that situation. And if who we were bringing to that situation was spiritually healthy, then there wouldn't be discord. Can we make that assumption together? If we believe that we create our own experience and there's an area of our life where there is discord, then there's an area in our life where spiritually we are currently experiencing some lack of spiritual health, right? I don't know about you guys, but when I get out of bed and I come to church, it's because I'm wanting this thing to do something in my life, right? It's not just to know the stuff, it's to do the stuff, right? And so we have to get into the mindset that if there's a discord there, it's okay that it's there, right? We're not going to pretend like it's not there. However, we need to get out of it, right? And boy, isn't it, we're talking about concepts of politics and social justice and things of that nature. How great is it that we, had that song this morning that was inspired by Dr. King's statement. Darkness cannot cast out darkness. Only light can do that, right? Hate cannot cast out hate. Only love can do that. And so when we look at the areas of our lives and we want to join our personal responsibility with the way that we experience and see and contribute to the world on a political and a corporate and a social standpoint, we've got to really suck it up. We've got to really say to ourselves, it's our responsibility to do this. And then we have to be willing to share that with people that will lovingly hold us accountable to do the work. Uh-oh. It's easy when you say to yourself, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do this thing. It's an awesome thing. It's going to be hard, but I can do it. And I'm not going to let anybody know that I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it. And then when you're faced with whatever it is, and the decision time is now, and you're the only voice in the conversation, it can kind of come down to who wins the internal conversation at that point, right? Yes, I'm going to quit smoking. I'm going to never smoke again right after this one over here. Right? When we set a goal for ourselves, it's important for us to rally those who will know the truth with us. Now, a lot of times they say for us, and I'm not a fan of saying for us only because can I know something for you? You've got to know it. However, if you tell me what you want to know, you come to me and you say, you know what, Reverend Brian, I want to know that every time that I am listening to or a part of a political conversation, that the way that I react to it is with loving kindness, patience, and compassion. If you tell me that, I can't know it for you, but I can know it with you. So that way, the next time I'm standing next to you or the next time I'm stalking your social media page, and I see that that's not the behavior that you're choosing in that moment, I can remind you of the commitment that you made. But what's interesting about that is that how often does the reminder set off the same alarm? Right? Maybe sometimes, right? So as spiritual kin, we have to be accountable to each other in principles that we've agreed are the principles that we operate on. So for us to make a public claim about who we're going to be in those areas of our lives and to entrust that to each other as a spiritual community and to allow our spiritual kin to call us to our highest idea, not because it's the right one, not because it's the good one, not because it's the appropriate one, but because we have asked, because we have chosen our desire and stated what it is, so that our spiritual kin can remind us of that truth when we seem to be forgetting ourselves, right? Now we see the inherent beauty of having spiritual community, which can be listed in that list of social structures, can it? Easily. And so we hold each other accountable, and once we start to hold each other accountable for what our desire is, you notice, not hold each other accountable to be good people. I got my eyes on you today. Right? That's possibly why a bunch of us are here. Because the last place we were at, they wanted to make sure that they could tell us when we were being good people or bad people. Well, okay, if that's how they do it, let them do it. But the way that we do it is by stating our desired experience, what do we desire, and then supporting and loving each other in that. So that we can know that there's someone who knows the truth with us, that genuinely loves us and has our highest experience in mind, and will remind us of that truth when we have seemed to have forgotten ourselves. And when we do that, we suddenly begin to recognize that there is something missing in the world if there's discord there, and typically what's missing is something that we are withholding. If there's not enough love in your workplace, and you are not choosing to be more lovely to every person despite how they treat you, then you have forgotten your responsibility, your personal responsibility to the people of your workplace. That's right. When we see that there is a need, and for whatever reason we conjure up, we choose to withhold the antidote, how can we, it's madness. It's crazy. It's literal craziness, right? And we're all kind of crazy, so it's okay. We're not being judgmental about it, but we're being aware. We're being aware that if we want more kindness in the way that corporations make decisions, and when my company is choosing not to be kind, and when my boss is being unkind, and we choose to withhold our own kindness and our own compassion, in those moments, we have contributed to the discord. We have seen what we think sucks, and we have added suction. Right? And so we have to call ourselves to be that thing, right? We have to call ourselves to know that truth. We have to have enough personal responsibility in our spiritual principles, and we have to have a community that we rely on to constantly hold us accountable to those principles. And again, not the principles that make us a good person or a bad person, but the principles that reflect who we desire to be. Because, and I heard this quote once, and it blew me away. I mean, this is something you could probably sit and talk about for hours and hours and hours. But the truth is, if you think that you are kind and compassionate, and you do not choose kindness and compassion at every possible turn, then that person that you think you are is an imaginary person. They don't exist. Now, that might seem a little harsh, but only if you're worried about goodness or badness, or rightness or wrongness. What it really is just a call to action from a member of your spiritual kin who's saying, this is our chance. If we've declared that we want to live in a world that works for everyone, and that we want to bring our personal accountability to join itself with who we are in the world, corporately, who we are in the world politically, who we are in the world from an academic standpoint, from a social standpoint, from a familial standpoint, from every standpoint that we could possibly be, then I cannot stand idly by when we sit there at Starbucks and you yell at the barista for forgetting to put the extra pump of chocolate in your mocha. Now, it doesn't mean that I have to then turn to you and use the same tool that you have misused in order to reprimand you, does it? But what it does mean is that I should feel comfortable and confident to say to you, hey, it's a pump of chocolate. We don't need to get this upset, right? Let's breathe. Let's remember who we are. Let's take responsibility for who we are to such a degree that we can hold each other accountable so well that as a community, as spiritual kin, that when we move out into the world, we bring that gift beautifully, purely, and wholly to every area of life that humanity exists, everywhere that we find ourselves, everywhere that we see ourselves. In that place, at that moment, on that day, love has arrived. On that moment, on that day, in great number, compassion has shown its light and will absolutely prevail. Every single time we choose it, There is no reason we should not feel called to a place of authority when we know that all the areas that we're seeking to affect are areas that we ourselves, as a human expression of God, have created. We have created it. We hold complete sway over it. And the opportunity for it to change at any given moment rests solely on our willingness to bring the newness in to the fold in spite of what anyone else or anything else might be telling us, reflecting to us, or trying desperately to get us to be, to conform to. When we talk about being nonconformists, we're not talking about avoiding structure and not being able to organize. In fact, we need to be able to do that to be effective in the world. When we talk about being nonconformists, what we say is that when we see an area of the world where there is discord, we choose no longer to participate in the structures that promote and perpetuate discord. And when we do that, not only do we free ourselves and our own lives, but we free the opportunities for other people to feel that they are in a safe place in our presence so that they too can call upon the deep, indwelling, infinite presence of love that the universe, that God, that Spirit has provided to us right there at the tip of our fingers, on the tip of our tongue, prepared to deliver itself to the world the second we fashion ourselves to be an avenue through which that good is flowing. And so today and this week, I invite you to become accountable to one another, to become responsible for yourself, and to know this truth so clearly and so divinely that Santa Rosa is literally being transformed by your presence. That every political interaction, that every social action, that every single human interaction in this city is now absolutely encompassed with and infused with your compassion, your love, and your deep desire to express a world that works for everyone. Please join me in this affirmative prayer. Because what we know is that God is all there is. We call it spirit, we call it the universe, we call it whatever the heck we want to call it that reminds us the truth that there's only one thing, just one, just one, just one. And as we know this one thing, we recognize it at the infinite wellspring of love, of joy, of peace, of unity, of power, and the very presence of goodness everlasting. And because we know that it is all that there is, we assume and accept and know that it is all we are. That each and every single one of us is inspired, empowered, emboldened to be a greater, more powerful avenue through which this goodness is flowing right now. And not because it's right or wrong or good or bad, but because our very presence here, our very existence in this prayer, the very essence of our soul being present in this moment has declared that this is what we desire. And together, we claim that desire by simply delivering it, and not just with our words, but with a deep inner knowing of its truth and the great and powerful commitment to express it and to share it and to make it manifest as us right now. And so we give thanks for each other, we give thanks for this teaching, we give thanks for this opportunity to share together in our spiritual kinship in such a way that we fully and completely, unabashedly accept this truth as already so. We accept that it is already happening. And so we simply surrender it unto the law. We deliver it unto the law, knowing that we don't need to willfully go out and force the world to be controlled into a world that works for everyone. That by this prayer and by every prayer that we speak and by every word that we speak and by every moment that we embody God, we are the embodiment of an understanding that the law takes and demonstrates in an even greater and more powerful way than we could possibly have imagined ourselves. And the end result of that is a complete and total freedom of discord. And what we know of it is that we call it forth now as a world that works for everyone. And together we say, and so it is. Amen. Thank you.